proverb, I am because we are, is the foundation of the ACBN YouTube channel. Tap in for all of our remarkable content and ecosystem mobilization through the phenomenal practitioners and thought leaders we engage on this channel. In the words of Adrienne Marie Brown, things are not getting worse, they are getting uncovered. We must hold each other tight to pull back the veil. Get ready for another amazing ACBN powered interview.
Again, I want to thank you for being here, and please go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us the origins of the work that you do as the founder of FACE Coalition.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So my name is Tiffany Callender. I am the daughter of two very proud Bayesian parents who immigrated to Canada in the late 1970s. So I am born in Canada, first generation. I am a mother, I am a sister, and more than that, I am a community developer. I work exclusively now for 20 years, serving exclusively the Black community from Montreal, where I am born, raised, and stayed. That's what I often say. And I've worked in community organizations my whole adult life. So with celebrating 20 years, and I'm turning 41, half of my life has been dedicated to Black community development strategies. I began my role as an executive in one of the oldest Black community organizations in Quebec called the Cote Black Community Association, where I served as the executive director as of 2013. In that mandate, and before that, where I started my career in about 2003, it was to really develop adapted approach and look at modification of best practices to service different demographics within the Black community. In Quebec, particularly, I worked with the English-speaking Black community, which are a double minority, so visible and language. And how do we ensure access to the different public services as well as other resources that would help them to change the trajectory of their life, their experience. Through this work, I've worked on different initiatives, but the one that is, I think, most telling or could have forecasted my current role was I served as the manager of a Black entrepreneurship development strategy by the province of Quebec from 2010 until 2015. And this initiative was to support Black businesses. I had the mandate of supporting English-speaking Black business owners to develop their businesses, so startup, and to scale up, and then to apply for financing. And through that initiative, which I was able to contribute to ensuring was renewed a few times by different leaders within the Quebec government. We had government changes there, which is always a risk to our growth in the nonprofit sector. I learned a few things. There was quite a few learnings that came from there. The first thing is that there exists a very robust ecosystem to support businesses to develop in Canada, and in that case, Quebec. However, our community is marginalized and excluded from that ecosystem and are not aware. So they do not have the awareness that these services exist. They are not engaged or invited into those networks to be able to gain access to the multiple resources, and that there is a complete disconnect between our community and what they would need to start and grow a thriving business, including access to capital, which was the biggest learning that we saw in that project. So fast forwarding and becoming the executive director of the CDNBCA, I always pinned economic development, which would be leveraged or would be the strategy to implement something effective with entrepreneurship on my, vision board of what I wanted to do under my mandate. And right. I had the opportunity in 2020, during a pandemic, of course, to really have a conversation with government, at this time, the federal government, to address the gaps in access to developmental resources and access to capital for Black entrepreneurs, this time from a national scope. And this was all kind of springboarded off of the government's emergency services or programs that were launched during COVID-19, namely the Canadian Emergency Bank Account, where we saw that the criteria to have access to these resources, which is, a 2-year loan term, $40,000 at 0% interest, with a 20% forgivable amount if you were to pay back 80% before the term ended,
Okay.
was being administered through the banks. And anybody who has any lived shared experience as a Black person who's dealt with financial institutions, furthermore, an entrepreneur, would know that at best, our relationship with financial institutions are strained, and at worst, they're non-existent. So by the government administering that program through financial institutions, that indicated to me and to my co-founders that we are starting off again behind the start line, because there is no relationship there, and there's no gateway to have the access to that capital. And then the criteria itself for the CEBA would not reach most of our business owners, because the way in which they identified qualification is different from the way in which our businesses evolve and grow. So this was our opportunity to speak to our government and say, hey, government, you need to create an alternative pathway to access to capital for Black-owned businesses. And this does not need to be a COVID response. This needs to be a permanent response, because this is a long-standing issue. Although COVID was the pandemic of the day, the epidemic, which continues to persist in Canada, is racism and exclusion. So by definition, we needed a permanent response that was tailor-made for Black entrepreneurs. And this was the foundational building blocks of the Black entrepreneurship program, which is what we raised, is a $330 million contribution from government, of which 160 million through the Government of Canada, the BDC, and credit unions, Alternative Advanced City, created the $160 million loan fund that I manage now at FACE as the inaugural CEO and co-founder.
That's incredible. So you really sparked all change around the country with that one. We appreciate that. And so that's a bit about the work. Can you tell me the actual core mission and vision of the organization?
Absolutely. So FACE, which stands for the Federation of African Canadian Economics, its mission is to be the catalyst for generational wealth for Black Canadians. And our vision, that's our vision statement. Our mission statement is to create wealth through strategic partnerships with the private and public sector to ensure that we are supporting economic growth within our community. So when you look at the vision of FACE and its mission and its vision for what it's going to achieve in this country, for the 1.5 million Black people that are here and identify as a part of the Black community, it's really to develop strategies for economic development and growth. Entrepreneurship is a subset of economic development. So that is the first strategic lever that we pulled by administering the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund to give access to capital to Black entrepreneurs.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for explaining. So what inspires you most about your work?
When you dedicate half of your life, which, it's sometimes even strange for me to say, it's a reckoning that I do almost every day, is what drives you to do this work. And the best answer that I have is I think that we're all given purpose when we come onto this plane, onto this planet. And I think that I've been given the mission to serve my community and people who look like me. So this is Africans anywhere in the diaspora. By doing this, it is a work of empathy, care, resistance, advocacy, and it's all rooted in your own identity, because it could be simple to work in the nonprofit sector and work for any large philanthropic or nonprofit organization, but when you're working for yourself, because you are a part of the community that you're trying to serve, that's a different level of mission. That's a different level of intimacy that you are executing in your work. So the thing that drives me the most is that I've had the good fortune of being raised by parents who instilled in me immediately that I have to be very proud of being a person of African descent. Although I am what I like to call a genetic nomad. I'm not quite sure where I come from on the continent. I was raised to understand that's where I come from. That's your home, that's your root, that is your legacy, that is your heritage, and you are to be very proud of it. And you have the responsibility to explore that from a historical lens, from a contextual lens, from an individual personal lens, so that you fortify that in your being. And then I was fortunate to be born in a community that also nurtured me in terms of my identity as a person of African descent. So my first job was at a Black day camp. Like, so I've been doing this from way back. And all of those experiences, whether it was working at the Black day camp ran by, the Black aunties, to see Black women, leading and guiding and structuring our development as young people and taking care of us, that intergenerational work, which is the first one I've ever had, to then move into, working in the nonprofit sector as a professional career. I've technically have never worked on Bay Street. I've never worked in corporate Canada. I've worked for my community. And that in and of itself is a driver, something I'm very proud of. And as I'll speak to the point of being a mother, I have 3 children that I believe that if I can help to shape the landscape of their experience as Canadians. And then, of course, there's the add-on. I say my add-on kids. When you work in community, I have over 2,000 kids that I've touched, worked with, influenced their parents, so all of them, they're my kids, and I see it like that. So as I think in the future for them, when I forecast 10 years, 20 years, 30 years into the future, what am I going to be sure of that I've created as a standing opportunity for them to have complete access to execute their passion, their skill set, and their drive in this, global landscape. I don't even think we can think anymore and just from a nationalistic perspective. We have to think about how do we make our footprint globally. And I think that's what motivates me to stay in this sector and contribute in this way. And the last thing I'd say is that I'm so proud and humbled by the opportunity to do this type of work for my community. And I take that not just a responsibility seriously, but as a blessing, because we know what some of our folks experience going into certain professional settings where they have to hide in plain sight. They can't be their full selves and talk about the things that are important to them, that are hurtful to them, that need to change for people who look like them. That's been my whole adult professional career. That's all I do. I think Black, I move Black, I plan Black, I execute Black. So, I'm hashtag all Black all day. So
this is who you are.
Exactly. So I feel like my life has been touched, by the Creator to say, this is what you're going to do with this lifetime. So make it count.
Absolutely. And you definitely have. So knowing that you have taken on this mantle and you are doing the work, what kind of challenges or barriers are you dealing with in the work that you do, and how are you overcoming them right now?
Oh, that's a huge question. And, I'm glad you asked it. So I'm going to start with the thing that an experience that I had and that I hold on to. And again, I think we're sent lifelines, we're sent messages by by the Creator, by our ancestors, to keep us on the road of the mission that we've been set to do here. And I remember one time I was ready to tap out. Listen, it was too hard. It was I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel to say that I would move the needle. And this was right when YouTube was becoming a thing. And I'm watching YouTube and I saw a video of Minister Louis Farrakhan. And this is like in the 70s, I'm pretty sure if I wasn't born, I was a baby when this was recording. That's how long this was. So this is somebody taking a VHS that they had and putting it on YouTube so we could and he said something that I hold on to every day when I'm doing this work, is that we have to love our people past their dysfunction and recognize that the dysfunction is a byproduct of the situation and circumstance we have been put in historically. So our trauma that shows up when we are trying to move past the oppression, past the exclusion, past the systemic, I guess you would say, dulling or nullification or elimination of our potential as a people, that piece is so critical to stay focused on what you need to do. So why I say that is when you say, what are the challenges that I face creating strategies and opportunities and access to information or networks or ideas and concepts that my community has been excluded from for so long. So we are now playing a game of infusing as quickly as we can things that were locked away from them. And that in and of itself takes a lot of patience and care, design, to reach our community where they are, to be able to understand that our Black Canadian experience, I'll use Canada as the example, but that could be applied globally, is not the same. So my Black Canadian experience is different from your Black Canadian experience, different from somebody in Halifax, different to somebody who just got here from the continent and now live in Alberta. So it's how do you make yourself available, accessible, palatable for this community to get what they need to move their own agendas and plans and strategies forward. And then the trauma shows up. And the trauma is a byproduct of nothing that we've done to each other, but what has been done to us. So the mistrust, the sense of despair, the sense of not willing to believe that there are good intentions behind the things that are being put forward to them. And those are all normal. You do not survive, colonization and slavery and imperialism and all of these things and think that you're just going to walk into things and go, of course, this is to my favor. Of course, this is good for me. You are going to challenge what is being put in front of you because it's a defense mechanism, even if it's coming from somebody that looks like you, right? Because, we suffered from a tremendous amount of betrayal as a human body on this planet, whether it is from those outside and different from us or within ourselves. So those are a lot of the challenges that I face. But again, the labor of love is to know that I understand that experience. We have that shared experience. So I can leverage that if I do it with enough care and intention to move past those trauma responses and say, listen, I'm here for you to win. And I that's my intention. That's my goal. And when you win, I win, we all win. But that in and of itself is a major and unique, I think, experience that we have as community builders and developers of strategies. And the last thing I will say is that infrastructure is a big piece because we don't have in certain parts of the world solid infrastructure through institutions or organizations, either the ones that need to exist don't exist. There's a reason why we had to create a FACE because a FACE didn't exist. There was no community development financial institution to disperse capital to Black businesses, or the longstanding institutions that have existed or organizations have been severely underfunded and neglected by whether it's the public sector, private sector, philanthropic sector. So they have not been able to scale, in terms of capacity and development, R&D and all of these things to develop their service model to Black Canadians or, Black people globally, really. So that's some of the challenges that I face as a leader in this space. But I remain optimistic because there's two things I've learned. There's what Minister Farrakhan said. There's what Malcolm X said. He said, make it plain. If you make things plain, people will get it. They'll get on, they'll figure it out. And if it takes them a while, they'll find you, they'll catch up to you. And I think the other part is that we're in a unique position here in Canada. We are 1.5 million Black people. That is a perfect laboratory size, if I've ever seen one, to design, develop, adapt, adjust a best practice model that then can be exported and be an example to other Black countries and Black leadership in other parts of the world that are serving people of African descent to adapt it. And the knowledge transfer will create what I am hoping I will be able to do is create a ripple effect where we now create economic think tanks that will benefit Black people and people of African descent anywhere in the world. And once those things start happening and we start connecting, then we will have the ROI on this investment that we've made into community.
Absolutely. Like you hit the nail right on the head. It's so important for the entire community to tap into that. So what are your key priorities right now in your work? Is there anything specific that pops out for you?
Yeah. Priorities on my side is we have this loan program, $10,000 to $250,000 that is deployed. We opened our doors on May 31st, 2021. Very proud to report that in our first year of operations. We dispersed 8.2 million in capital to businesses across the country. Closing the last fiscal year, so that's 2022, 2023, we dispersed 17.23, so yeah, 17.2 million. So we've in a small space of time deployed $25.3 million into Black businesses across the country in every region except one. I got to get the Yukon. If any Black businesses in the Yukon, holla at me so we can say we did coast to coast to coast. You know, I'm a stickler for those things. But all of that to say that that program is up, it's running, the machine is on. We've scaled as an organization. We now have 43 employees. We've developed a face client service department that helps our applicants understand the application process, help them with applying on our custom made platform that we utilize to process all applications. And now there's just key things to that loan program that we need to activate. We need to make that micro lending program, that 10 to 25,000 nationwide. Right now, we started off with a pilot just in Ontario and BC. That's got to go across the country, working hard on that. I'm looking also at the other necessary best practices or tools that entrepreneurs need to find success. Loans is one strategy within any entrepreneur strategy of raising capital to start and scale their business. And we need to kind of make those visible. So we are working right now to launch a program, launch a feature as well at Face to be able to give them the full scope of resources that are available to them. Where are the grants? Where are the VCs? Where are the tax credits? Where are the, where's that money that you can use at different stages of starting your business? And along that journey, Face is there to kind of answer a part or a portion of that, that capital gap, which we filled now in this $250,000 debt fund. Also, it's, elevating and exposing the market, right? We have Black businesses all over this country, and we have the privilege at Face of knowing what sectors, where they are, who runs them. We have all of this data. We have over 4 million data points on our platform. And now it's like, okay, how do we leverage that? So soon also you're going to see, an initiative to map those businesses across Canada to give these entrepreneurs some visibility. So increase that B2C volume, right? To get people to say, if you want to support Black businesses, you can do that every day by voting with your dollar. Walk to the nearest Black business that and now that you can find and go and, use their services, buy from their restaurant, get your haircut at these shops, use their accounting firms, use the construction companies, like utilize them. And then we are obviously being of service to these businesses as well to do that. And the last thing for me, if you haven't been able to tell, I'm a little bit of a nut for data. Data is key because data, which is, data is exactly that. It's data that converts to insight, that converts to knowledge, that converts to actual action, right? So, a funny story I'll tell you quickly, Blessed, is when we were having these initial conversations with government, and we're trying to co-design. We're giving them the problem, the solution, what we think should be done. And I was asked way too many times, well, how many Black businesses are there in Canada? And I was like, but you're the government, like you should know.
We pay taxes with you,
right? We register with you. You're Industry Canada. We pay taxes to you. Like this. You should tell me how many Black businesses are in Canada. But I didn't take offense. I saw it as an opportunity. And that means that there's a gap in terms of stakeholders of understanding the Black economic power, which is going unseen in Canada. What are we contributing to the GDP? What are we contributing to VAT? Like what are we doing here so that our value, is put on, in a colloquial way, put some respect on our name. We're doing work here, and we're creating jobs, and we're paying taxes, and we're servicing, communities, and that needs to be elevated. So the other big project for me is definitely research. We need to understand who we are economically as a people in this country. So the loan program generates a certain amount of data just by the function or the activity of lending, which that data can then be analyzed and can be crunched so that we're able to demonstrate the economic potential and force of this business class. But there's the other part of this where we just get at Black Canadians, and this kind of segues into what I was mentioning, that entrepreneurship is the first strategy of FACE, but there are other verticals that we want to attack. Like when we're looking at investment power, like what can we do as a community? How are we investing? How are we using certain vehicles to make sure that we're increasing our wealth? We launched this year the Black Quebec Pension Survey in collaboration with Duns, Pierre and Barnett Global, which is a Black research firm in Toronto, to look at what is the actual investment capacity or saving capacity of Black Quebecers. We started with one province, and that data doesn't exist anywhere. Nobody knows what the actual saving habits, investment potential, they don't know, but now we will know. And then that gives us the opportunity to engage pension funds and investment firms and say, hey, this is what the Black community can do. And that's beneficial for you. Now, the question is, if you want that to happen, what are you willing to do for the Black community? Absolutely. Where are you willing to inject capital for us to invest in infrastructure and in our businesses to create that kind of cyclical, three-way beneficial transaction where Black Quebecers, in this first instance, are able to save in a different way and create wealth for themselves. The pension fund now has new pensioners, and an organization like FACE now has an investor in the pension funds to invest into the businesses that we support. So you see, these are the key pieces that I have to work very fast to put in place. I need everybody's support. I need everybody's all hands on deck to get these strategies.
I love it. Absolutely. Fast and efficient. So that's amazing. Like I said, you've been doing some remarkable work, especially the past 2 years, to be able to pull that off in just a short period of time. So now, with all of that being said, and you've definitely changed the way that capital flows through Black business in Canada. So how do you feel about the future of Black entrepreneurship in Canada?
Oh, the future is bright, man. Like, again, I sit in a very privileged seat where I get to, look at our portfolio and see that, wait a minute, we invested in an aeronautic, like a Black-owned business. We invested in a what? Wait a minute, who's doing 3D what? Like, there's so much potential that is unseen. We are the best kept secret of Canada. I promise you, Black people and the businesses and the innovation that we're putting forth. What we need is the 4 pillars that helps any business start and scale. And it is very simple. We need to be able to create access to best practices. We need to be able to create access to networks. We need to be able to create access to sponsorship. So this is when, a business leader takes you in and gives you access to their business network so that you can develop relationships and increase sales. And last but not least, you need to create access to capital, which we've done, right? So and I'll also add mentorship in there. So those elements are things that we've been kind of starting businesses in a silo by ourselves, in different communities without those pillars, which are fundamental to any business being able to start and grow and scale and to really be able to make economic impact. So I think it's bright. I think that with FACE and other actors on the ground who are genuinely and sincerely invested in leveling the playing field to access, I think that we can move things forward. I think that there are still definitely gaps that need to be addressed in terms of access, whether it's to information or if it's access to different vehicles or different opportunities. And we can work on that. I'm going to take the moment to say hi procurement. If we want to be sincere about letting Black businesses get in there, the government of Canada is the biggest customer and client you could ever have, right? Any government is the biggest customer you can have. So we need to figure out what that looks like, because here's the bottom line. B2C will help you start a business. B2B will help you get into the supply chain and to be able to develop some growth in your business. But if you want to scale and create wealth, you need B2G. And if we don't start activating on those verticals, we are going to give ourselves a long road to being able to see Black wealth created in Canada. And we don't have We don't have time for a long road. We need the shortest road, shortest and most efficient road at the least resistance possible. And what I'm confident about and why I say that is because time and time again throughout history, this short time in history where we've been oppressed and the underdog and excluded, because we always have to remember that that's, if there was ever a 60-minute clock, what we're experiencing as Black people and people of African descent on this planet, it's about a minute on that 60-minute clock, right? Feels intense, but it's not the fullness of our contribution to humankind. We have to be cognizant that when you give us an inch, forget a mile, we're gone. We're gone. We take off. It's proven time and time again, every sector, every industry. So I don't think we'll have any different of a result if we create the right conditions of success for Black entrepreneurs in Canada, and then straight, like I'll say it straight, the world, because I promise you the model that we put in place here at FACE will be used and replicated to support other Black innovators in different countries to raise our people out of poverty and to create a different trajectory for their lives on this planet. That I'm sure.
That's huge. And, you know, you've been such a catalyst for the remarkable systemic transformation that we've experienced so far. I'm glad that you have a vision for where you want to see us go. So we definitely applaud you and the work that you're doing. We want to give you your flowers because it's well-deserved. So you've talked a little bit about like where you'd like to see, you know, on Black entrepreneurship in Canada. Do you have any words of wisdom for emerging leaders or young people who are entering the ecosystem?
That's a good question. Okay, so there's a reason why we named, the name of the organization is FACE, but I call it the FACE Coalition, because I really think it's important for young people to understand that you stand on the shoulders of somebody's work before you got to it. I understood that coming into my career that I've had, which is a beautiful one over 20 years, that everything that I'm doing is because somebody before me, our community generals, that's what I call them, kicked down doors, did the hard work for me to be able to sit in a room and negotiate with a government or negotiate with corporation or negotiate for anything that we're able to do now. I had the chance to sit with Senator Don Oliver, and he's the first Black man named to the Senate, Canadian Senate. And in that call, he told me this is the third attempt to his knowledge of trying to put in place a Black entrepreneurship strategy in Canada, supported by the government of Canada. So when that's told to you and you hold that, I have to understand that I've been given the opportunity to execute and to deliver something that was worked on before, because every time we swing the axe and hit the tree, that's when it gets ready to fall. So I'm just the third swing of that axe, and I have to recognize that. So I think it's important for the young people in our community, whether you're in the nonprofit sector, for-profit sector, to know that there were pioneers before you. Recognize them, revere them, exalt them, understand that they've paved a smoother road for you. And that helps to give you a sense of context when you operate. And that is required in what we're doing, because although we want to see Black business owners conquer the whole market, I don't want you to just work within the Black community and sell only to Black people. The whole market is yours to go get, but you have to understand the dual role that you play in developing an economic strategy for your people while you conquer the larger economic landscape of this country or the world. And when we bring that consciousness to the forefront of how you work, this is how we're going to achieve some of the things that we want to see, where we will have growing, thriving businesses, well, I'll even start before that, for Black people to choose entrepreneurship as a viable opportunity to support themselves and their families and to build wealth for themselves, to ensure that we are supporting the start and growth of Black businesses that will be job creators, so that our children are having their first job experience in a Black-owned business that wants to see them win on multiple fronts. You're not just an employee. You're a young Black person who maybe works here part-time while you're studying at university, and I want to see you grow. So my investment in you is different. We want to see create a space where we are insulating ourselves, not isolating, but insulating ourselves with the economic power that we will build to address the other systemic issues that we have, such as justice, education, housing, culture, and the like. Money makes those strategies effective. We are always undercapitalized to address or create strategies that help us for the things that are affecting us the most. So that is what I would say to young people. Understand you're part of a bigger plan, and you have to be cognizant of that. And last but not least, I would say to young people, nothing is done alone. Yeah, and closed mouths don't get fed. So you have to be a part of a community. You have to ask questions. You have to say, I need help. And there is no shame or that is not an indicator at all of your capacity. What you're doing is being wise to ask for those support so that you can reinforce yourself to execute your plan. And I say young people, but I'm really talking to our entire community. Age is not a factor in this strategy. But obviously with the youth, this is where we have the most potential and opportunity, because we have one of the fastest growing youth populations in Canada. Black people are still having lots of babies out here. So that means that if we get them young and we give them this finance literacy and we give them these tools, we will see them build something different than we did with the tools that we have. And I just think that those things will be stronger, especially in emerging markets, technology. Look at AI, look at all of these things. We've got to make sure that our kids are ready to conquer these opportunities, because they've got it. They've got the natural wit. They've got the skills. They're sharp as anything. We just need to fortify them with the right tools and make sure that they understand that they're part of they have an individual plan, and then there's a collective plan. And this is why I call our organization a coalition, because that's what it's going to take.
Absolutely. And being a coalition, that you said, like you said, we're building on other people's work. And SETC has a series called When Elders Speak. So I think it's very important that we, take those times and opportunities to be able to, tune in and listen to the elders that we have with us. And between that and reading as much as we can to know where they left off and where we can continue the work. So I definitely appreciate that. And for the general community or population, do you have any final closing thoughts or calls to action for the community?
The only thing that I'll say, and before I say that, I do want to recognize the work that SETC does, Sisters in Solidarity. Like, these are all safe spaces for us to reconnect with our Indigenous habits, right? To know we listen to our elders, we respect them, we take their knowledge, we understand chain of command, we understand these things culturally, and we need to apply them in our everyday lives. No, don't forget them and don't get lost in this shuffle, right? And the world has been made to act just like that, a shuffle. So you're confused and disoriented, but we can find our way. We're a compass to each other. My message would be the following. Anything that we do, the we factor is required. So we have to get really comfortable with being a collective in how we move forward. And in that context, there'll be times when you are going to play the role of lead. There will be times when you have to play the role of support. There will be times when you have to play the role of advocate. There will be times when you have to play the role of agitator. There'll be times when you have to be, just still and hold space. And we have to understand that all of those different profiles or characters that I've just described are critical for us to move forward. One is not more important than the other. One is not more valuable than the other. It is just a shift in a strategy to be able to get where we need to go. I think that power is something that we sometimes look for externally, the recognition of power, the recognition of titles, all of these things, where power is really something that's centered within you. So no matter what you're doing at any given time, you will feel powerful if you pull from inside and project out. What we often do is wait for outside to determine how powerful we are and should feel. And I think that is something that we need to reflect on as a community. I said to one of my mentors this morning, I did not ask for this role. I did not ask to be put in this seat. People make the mistake to say, heavy is the head that wears the crown. I don't wear a crown. I wear a very heavy helmet that I that I help to build my community with. But I do it with love. And I change interchangeably in between those profiles when I have to, because I want us to succeed. So my message to the Black community is be kind with each other, be patient with each other, understand that the conditions that we experience, we did not put ourselves in. However, we are empowered enough to change those conditions if we work as a collective. And this should be the forefront of all of our conversations in our community centers, in our community centers, in our churches, in our mosques, in our barbershops, in our restaurants. The consciousness of collective has to come to the forefront. And once that happens, then we will move differently with each other to get where we need to go. So that is my, few pearls of wisdom, if I may offer any to my community. And I'm right there with y'all in the trenches to get that done.
Absolutely. That was beautiful. Well spoken. Like, couldn't have said it better myself. So we really appreciate that, all those gems. And we will continue on. I think we thank you for the priceless work that you've done, that you continue to do. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. We appreciate your phenomenal leadership. Continue on. We want to give you your flowers while you're here. And as always, we want to close off the way that we began this interview by acknowledging the stewards of the various lands that we're on. Of course, acknowledging our ancestors and elders, those who toiled without compassion or compensation, all of our community stewards whose shoulders we continue to stand on as we build and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So again, thank you so much for being here, Tiffany. Thank you to our viewers and listeners for tuning in.
Thank you so much, Blessed. Amen, Amin, and Ashe to all of that. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.